Let's talk about Laozi. He's this semi-legendary figure connected to a classic text called the Tao Te Ching. It recommends a path of, get this, non-coercive action that's guided by the deep, underlying pattern of reality. But what does that actually mean for how we live or how we lead? You ever notice how the harder you try to force something, the more it just seems to fight back? Well, what if that impulse we have to control everything is actually the source of most of our problems? We're going to look at a totally different kind of power, one based not on dominating, but on aligning with the way things already are.
So who even was Laozi? The honest answer? We're not 100% sure. He's what you'd call a semi-legendary figure. You know, the famous stories about him, like meeting Confucius, those actually come to us from a historian named Sima Xian, and he was writing centuries later. And here's what's really cool. Modern archaeological finds have unearthed manuscripts that show the text we call the Tao Te Ching actually evolved over time. So it was probably not the work of just one single person.
Okay, at the heart of this whole philosophy is the idea of the Tao. Now, the Tao isn't a god, and it's not a set of rules. Think of it more like the underlying way or the natural pattern of the universe. You know, the way a river flows or a tree just grows. The Tao Te Ching says the Tao that can be named isn't the real eternal Tao. It has to use this indirect, kind of confusing language because this fundamental pattern just can't be pinned down with words or controlled by force.
The text also warns us about a habit we all have. We create these sharp distinctions, and then we get obsessed with them. For example, the moment everyone agrees on what's beautiful, the idea of ugly is born right alongside it. So here's the key. When we turn these distinctions into rigid hierarchies, fixating on one, devaluing the other, we just end up fueling desire, rivalry, and a whole lot of social problems. Suddenly, everyone's chasing the exact same narrow definition of good.
And that leads us to the most famous and probably most misunderstood concept, wu wei. It's often translated as non-action, but that's not it at all. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting without forcing, without all that meddling and control. Instead of trying to dominate a situation, wu wei is all about disciplined restraint, picking the right moment, and finding the path of least resistance. It's the difference between trying to paddle a canoe against a super strong current versus skillfully steering it downstream with the flow.
And that perfectly illustrates the idea of Ziran, or naturalness. Now, this isn't about running off to live in the woods. It's about letting things unfold according to their own patterns, without all our anxious overmanagement. A leader who gets this governs with restraint. They don't pile on more laws or micromanage every little detail. Instead, they simplify things. They interfere less. And by doing that, they cultivate this non-coercive influence, called Dei, that comes from being aligned with that natural flow.
So these ideas all come from that central text, the Tao Te Ching. It's a short, classic book with 81 poetic chapters. And while people say Laozi wrote it, scholars heavily debate its real author and when it was written. Its core message, though, is pretty clear. It connects this kind of metaphysical humility, admitting we can't control everything, directly to a political philosophy of restraint and just less interference.
Now, to get the full picture, there are two other texts you should know about. First, the Zhuangzi, which expands on Taoist philosophy using these brilliant stories and a healthy dose of skepticism. It also features Laozi as a character, which helps shape his image. And then there's the Shiji, that historical record we mentioned. That's what gives us the legendary biography of Laozi, even while admitting we don't know much about the man for sure. So, what's the big takeaway here? The philosophy of the Tao Te Ching is this really powerful critique of our obsession with control. It suggests that real effectiveness, whether it's in your personal life or in leadership, doesn't come from forcing your will on the world. It comes from a disciplined alignment with it. It's a call for less meddling, less fixation on value judgments, and a deeper respect for timing and restraint. And it leaves us with a question: where in our own lives might we be applying force when what we really need is alignment?